The ship drifted through the quiet dark like a tiny spark in an endless night, and most of the crew didn't even notice how the silence had slowly grown heavier over the last few days. But one person did. Leon had been watching the strange readings on her console since dawn, though dawn didn't mean much out here. Time felt different in deep space. Light and darkness had nothing to do with suns. They came from the ship itself, switching from day cycle to night cycle in regular patterns the body was supposed to believe. But even with all that, something felt off. She sensed it before the alarms ever sounded. She sat alone in the research chamber, her jacket still hanging open from a rushed morning, her hair tied in a simple knot that kept loosening every time the ship vibrated. She leaned closer to the glowing screen. The signal they were studying pulsed again, and the air felt almost warmer for a second. Like the universe had exhaled. She whispered, more to herself than to the machine. That's not random. The others on the crew didn't pay much attention to subtle things like this. They were used to measurable problems, numbers they could fix, broken wires they could replace. But Leon was different. Her job was to understand life, especially the kind that didn't look like life at first glance. And this signal felt alive. She scribbled notes in her small journal, even though digital logs were easier. The journal felt grounding, human, steady. Something about writing real ink on real paper reminded her she was still a person, and not just a set of coordinates in a report. The ship's intercom crackled. A voice spoke with tired confidence. "Team, prepare for energy wave scans. We're adjusting our orbit. Hold on to anything that moves." Leon braced herself. The ship shuddered as the engines shifted their direction, like a giant metal whale trying to turn in a tight space. She steadied her journal before it slid off the table. When the shuddering stopped, the room grew strangely still. Too still. A hum began to grow beneath the floor, building slowly, like something charging up from far below the ship. The monitors flickered. The lights dimmed. The hum rose again. Then came the first alarm. A red glow washed over the corridors. The soft voice of the ship system announced calmly, "Energy distortion detected. Stabilizers offline." Leon's breath caught for a moment. She wasn't scared yet, but she felt a sharp sense of awareness, the kind that made every detail around her feel sharper. She grabbed her journal and ran into the hallway just as the captain's voice echoed sharply through the speakers. "All crew to evacuation positions. Repeat evacuation positions." Evacuation? That word sent a cold rush through her. They had prepared for storms before, but they were always told the ship could handle almost anything. Crew members rushed past her, heading toward the escape deck. Some looked focused, others confused, some even annoyed that the ship was acting up again. Leon wanted to ask someone what exactly was happening, but the urgency in their movement told her she wouldn't get a clear answer. She reached the escape room, just as another violent tremor rocked the ship. The floor beneath her tilted sharply, sending everyone stumbling. Tools, bags, and loose panels slid across the metal floor. Someone shouted, "The wave hit early. Get in the pods." Leon's pulse sped up. She moved toward the pod assigned to her, a small 3-seat capsule that looked barely large enough to hold one person comfortably. But as she tried to step inside, another jolt slammed through the ship. The pod's door snapped shut before she entered, locking her out. "Wait!" she yelled, banging on the door. Inside, 2 crew members stared at her through the small window, their faces pale. One tried the manual override, but the lights on the panel flickered red. "It's jammed," he shouted. She stepped back as the emergency system triggered automatically. The pods launched one by one, sliding into the launch tunnel like bullets into a barrel. She watched hers shoot away with a crash of sparks. Her chest tightened for a moment, but she shook herself awake. She didn't have time to panic. She ran to the next pod. It was already full. The next launched. Another locked. There has to be one left, she muttered to herself as she sprinted down the line. Lights flashed wildly above her. The main corridor lights were now a harsh, flickering white. Static danced across the metal walls. The ship groaned like something alive and in pain. She finally found a smaller pod, an older model they kept for emergencies. It looked scratched, dented, and barely used, but its manual lock still worked. She pulled with all her strength. The door creaked open. She climbed inside, strapped herself in, and pulled the door shut. For a brief moment, the world went quiet. Her breathing was the only sound. Deep, shaky, but steady enough to keep her calm. Then the launch triggered. The pod shot out into space, so violently it forced her head back against the seat. She felt the weight of acceleration press down on her chest. The ship she had lived in for months disappeared behind her in a blur of light as the pod spun away. Through the small window, she saw something terrifying and strangely beautiful. The cosmic storm wasn't just a cloud of particles. It looked like liquid light, pulsing with lines of bright color. The wave moved like a living thing, stretching across space in smooth, rolling motion. Her pod was caught immediately. The lights inside dimmed. Sparks flickered from the console. The systems beeped, then hissed, then shut off one by one. The pod spun so hard, she felt her stomach twist. For a moment, she thought she might black out. But she whispered to herself, "Stay awake. Stay here. Stay present." She held on to those words the way someone on a stormy sea might hold onto the railing of a ship. Minutes passed. Or seconds. Or hours. She couldn't tell. The storm pulled the pod forward like it had chosen her, dragging her toward a point she couldn't see. Her screen flickered back to life for a moment, showing coordinates that made no sense. Her pod wasn't drifting. It was being pulled. Then everything went black. The next thing she felt was impact. Not enough to hurt, but enough to jolt her eyes open. Her head leaned against the side of the seat, and the faintest sound of wind reached her ears. Wind. There was no wind in space. She opened her eyes fully and blinked against the soft, glowing light pouring in through the pod's small window. Her heart skipped. The window wasn't filled with darkness or stars. It was filled with color. She slowly unlocked the door and pushed it open. A warm breeze brushed her face. She stepped out onto soft ground that felt almost like moss, but looked like tiny, glowing threads woven together. The air smelled sweet, gentle, different from any world she had known. She stood there for a long moment, just breathing, letting her body settle, trying to understand where she had landed. And she realized something. The ground beneath her feet was shifting slowly, like it was adjusting to her weight, not sinking, not swallowing, just adjusting, like a cushion welcoming her. She stepped back, startled. The ground shifted again, this time more gently, like a soft wave. Her heartbeat slowed. "You're alive," she whispered. A breeze stirred the glowing leaves of the trees nearby, as if answering. She didn't know where she was. She didn't know if anyone else had survived. She didn't know if she would ever get home. But she felt something, unexpected, a quiet sense that she wasn't alone. Not hard. Not on this strange, glowing world that seemed to breathe. With her. She set her hand gently on the glowing ground. It warmed beneath her touch. And for the first time since the storm began, she felt safe. The first few breaths on the new world felt heavy with surprise. Leon stood still for a long time, unsure if she should move or even speak. The wind moved softly around her, brushing her sleeves, almost like a gentle hand trying to calm her. She looked around slowly, letting her eyes adjust to the strange light. The sky above her didn't look like the sky she grew up with. It was soft, almost creamy in color, and streaked with pale glowing bands that shifted very slowly, like clouds made of light instead of mist. She stared at them with wide eyes. They didn't drift the way clouds usually did. They pulsed. She tried to speak, but her voice came out weak and shaky. "Where am I?" She whispered. The ground gave a tiny ripple under her feet. Not a tremor. Not a danger. Almost a nod. She stepped back quickly. The ground stilled again. She blinked, confused, then leaned down slightly to touch it. Her fingers brushed the glowing threads, soft like warm grass, but smoother. When she pressed her palm down, the glow brightened for a moment. A faint shiver ran up her spine, not fear, but shock. This world was reacting to her. She stood up and looked around once more. Behind her was the escape pod, half sunk into the soft ground like a pebble dropped into a pillow. The door hung open, and pieces of metal lay scattered around from the rough landing. She walked toward it and checked the inside. Everything was damaged. The screens were cracked. The communication unit was dark. The food compartment had burst open during the crash, and most of the supplies were ruined. She gathered whatever she could: a small water pouch, a broken medical kit, a handful of nutrient bars that hadn't been crushed. It wasn't much. She stepped back outside and looked at the glowing forest in the distance. The trees were tall and thin, with leaves shaped like long ribbons that shimmered in different shades. Some glowed blue, others soft yellow, others pale green. The branches swayed even when the air was still. "I need shelter," she murmured. She didn't know if the planet understood her words. But the wind stirred again, moving past her and pointing toward the forest like a quiet suggestion. She hesitated, then stepped forward. The first steps felt uncertain. The ground rolled softly under her feet, adjusting each time. It felt almost like walking on a living creature that didn't mind being stepped on, a creature that wanted her to keep going. As she walked closer to the forest, the air changed. It grew warmer, filled with a gentle humming sound. It wasn't mechanical or loud. It was soft and deep, almost like a low melody. Leon slowed down, listening closely. The sound grew brighter when she moved and dimmer when she stopped. "Are you guiding me?" she asked quietly. The hum lifted slightly. She couldn't help but smile a little. It had been a long time since anything had made her smile. She stepped into the forest. The glow of the leaves surrounded her immediately, lighting the path without any shadows. Each tree seemed to stretch its branches slightly as she approached, as if giving her more space. She brushed her fingers along the trunk of one tree. The bark felt warm, almost like skin warmed by sunlight. The glow in its leaves brightened gently at her touch. "You're beautiful," she whispered. A soft pulse of light ran up the trunk, like a quiet thank you. She kept walking until she found an open area beneath a wide canopy. The ground here was even softer, almost fluffy, but firm enough to walk on. She set down her supplies and took a deep breath. "I should check if there's danger," she said to herself. But in her heart, she didn't feel danger. She felt welcomed. Still, she moved slowly and carefully, observing everything. She examined small plants that grew in spiral shapes. Their tips glowed when she came near. Small floating lights drifted between branches, tiny and slow, like fireflies made of glass. She reached out to one. It hovered in front of her palm for a moment, then landed softly on her hand. It wasn't hot. It wasn't cold. It felt like a tiny heartbeat. She let out a long breath of wonder. Back on the ship, she had studied strange organisms, rare plants, unfamiliar microbes. But nothing had ever felt conscious, aware. Present. The little light left her hand and floated upward. "You're not just alive," she said softly. "You're listening." She walked back to the open area and sat down on the soft ground. The forest lights dimmed slightly, as if settling with her. Her stomach growled. She hadn't eaten since before the storm. She unwrapped one of the nutrient bars and ate slowly. She saved the rest carefully. She didn't know how long she might need them. As she ate, something unexpected happened. The ground near her shifted, forming a gentle rise. Vines crept out of the soil, growing right in front of her eyes. They twisted together, forming a small bowl-like shape. A few glowing fruits dropped into it from the trees above. She stared at them, stunned. Are those for me? The vines glowed softly. She reached out, picked up one of the fruits, and smelled it. It smelled sweet, almost like honey mixed with fresh rain. She took a tiny bite, ready to spit it out if it tasted wrong. But it was soft, warm, sweet, gentle, and almost instantly, her tired body felt lighter. Thank you, she whispered. The ground brightened under her. She leaned back, looking up at the glowing sky through the canopy. She felt her breath slowing. She felt warmth in her chest that she hadn't felt in days. For a moment, she imagined the planet breathing with her. Time passed quietly. She didn't know how long she sat there, her mind drifting between awe and exhaustion. She finally lay down on the soft ground, resting her head on her arm. The ground shaped itself slightly, forming a gentle curve that held her like a pillow. As she closed her eyes, she whispered, "You're not dangerous. You're kind." She slept. And in her sleep, she dreamed. She dreamed of roots stretching beneath the surface, glowing softly. She dreamed of branches carrying memories in their colors: orange for joy, blue for sorrow, green for hope. She dreamed of the whole planet connected like a single living mind. And in that dream, the planet spoke to her. Not in words, in feeling. A warmth, a welcome, a quiet promise. You are not alone. She woke slowly, opening her eyes to the same gentle glow. Her body felt rested, more than it had felt on the ship for weeks. She sat up, looked around, and noticed something. The forest around her had shifted during the night. Not dramatically, just a few branches moved. A few plants grew. The ground reshaped slightly, like it had watched over her. She whispered, "You protected me." A soft pulse of warm air moved through the clearing. She stood up and stretched. "I need to explore. I need to understand you." The forest brightened. She smiled again, a real smile this time, not the tired one she had used back on the ship. She gathered her supplies and took a deep breath. "Let's see what else you're hiding." The glowing vines uncurled, clearing a path. She stepped forward. And the world moved with her, guiding her deeper, showing her with each glow and each breath that she wasn't forsaken here. She was embraced. The morning on the glowing planet arrived in soft, shifting light that made every leaf shimmer. Leon woke from a deep sleep, feeling rested and calm in a way she hadn't for weeks. The world around her seemed alive and awake, even more than before. Each step she took made tiny sparks of light pulse through the ground, almost like it was acknowledging her presence. She wandered further into the forest, letting her hands brush against the soft, warm trunks. Each touch sent ripples of color through the trees, moving slowly toward the sky and fading into the soft bands of glowing clouds above. The wind carried gentle sounds, a mix of rustling leaves and faint humming, almost musical, almost like whispers of welcome. She found a small stream winding through the forest. The water glowed faintly blue and reflected the floating light ribbons of the trees. She knelt by the stream, scooping a handful of water to drink. It was pure, refreshing, different from anything she had tasted. It seemed to energize her body in a way the nutrient bars never could. She realized the planet provided not just sustenance, but comfort and care. As she followed the stream, she noticed that every living thing she encountered reacted to her. Flowers turned toward her as she passed, some unfurling their petals as if to greet her. Tiny creatures she hadn't seen before peeked from the shadows, glowing faintly, then darting back into safety. Leon smiled, feeling a sense of connection she had never felt in her life. She spoke aloud as she walked, testing the connection. "Hello, can you hear me?" Her voice sounded strange, small in the vastness of the forest. She didn't expect a reply, but the leaves above shimmered brighter, and the ground beneath her feet hummed a soft note. It wasn't words, but it was a response. She nodded slowly, understanding that the planet communicated differently. It used feelings, sensations, and light. It had a consciousness she could sense, even if she could not fully understand it. Hours passed as she explored. She discovered caves lined with glowing crystals that hummed softly when she touched them. She climbed gentle hills where the grass glimmered and bent like a wave whenever she stepped. Everywhere she went, the world reacted to her, subtly shifting to guide or comfort her. At one point, she stopped at a small clearing and looked up at the sky. The glowing bands of light seemed to pulse in rhythm with her heartbeat. She realized she could feel the planet's rhythm, its steady, slow, reassuring pulse. It calmed her, made her feel less alone. Even though she knew no other human had survived the storm, she decided to test her new understanding. She knelt and laid her hands flat on the ground. She concentrated on sending calm thoughts, hopes, and gratitude. The ground brightened beneath her, spreading outwards in a gentle wave of light that made her feel warmth all around her. She whispered softly, "I trust you." "I am here," the forest responded. A light breeze rustled the trees, carrying a subtle fragrance of sweet blooms. It felt like the planet had answered her in kind. Acknowledging her presence and her intention. She spent the next days exploring and learning the patterns of the world. She found that if she focused, she could predict small changes, which plants would grow, which paths the ground would form, and how the light would shift. It wasn't control, exactly, but guidance. The planet had a will of its own, but it welcomed her as part of its flow. Leon began to document everything in her journal, sketching the glowing plants, the movements of the streams, and her feelings. Writing felt more grounding here than in the ship. Every note she made connected her to this world in a way that no digital device could. She also started talking, aloud more often, describing what she saw and felt. The world seemed to respond to her words, even if it didn't understand them as language. The subtle hums and pulses were gentle encouragements, confirmations that she was learning and interacting correctly. At night, she lay beneath the glowing canopy, watching the shifting lights above. The colors pulsed slowly, as if breathing with her. She often dreamed in the night, vivid visions of vast root systems beneath her feet, moving as if alive. She saw images of energy flowing, connecting every part of the forest in a silent symphony. In her dreams, the planet spoke to her through feelings of safety, curiosity, and gentle wonder. Each morning, she woke with a clearer understanding of her surroundings. She learned which fruits were safe to eat, which plants could provide comfort, and which areas to avoid because the ground shifted unexpectedly. The planet's guidance was subtle, but it was always there, like a teacher that never spoke words but always showed the correct path. One day, as she walked along the stream, she noticed a series of stones arranged in a line, glowing faintly. They seemed deliberately placed, as if marking a path. She followed them carefully, feeling the ground under her feet pulse softly, encouraging her onward. At the end of the path, she found a small grove with a pool of water that shimmered like liquid glass. The pool reflected not only the glowing sky, but also something else, images of her journey, moments she had lived on the planet, flashes of light that seemed like memories of her presence. She realized the planet recorded her actions in some way, acknowledging her experiences and learning from her. She knelt by the pool, and touched the water's surface. Ripples spread, carrying reflections of light into the surrounding grove. She felt a strong wave of connection, a sense of being seen and understood. Her heart lifted. She whispered softly, "I am learning. I will respect you." The pool glimmered in response, and a gentle wave of warmth passed through her body. She laughed softly, a sound of pure joy she hadn't felt since before leaving the ship. Days turned into weeks. Leon continued exploring, documenting, and interacting with the world. She discovered that the planet was not just a place to survive, but a living companion. It adjusted itself to her needs, comforted her, and guided her safely. It was intelligent in a way she couldn't fully explain, but could feel deeply in her soul. She also realized she was changing. Her fears of being alone, of being abandoned, were slowly fading. She felt more alive here than she had in years aboard the ship. The planet provided not just physical sustenance, but emotional support and understanding. Sometimes she would close her eyes and lie on the soft, glowing ground, feeling the rhythm of the planet beneath her. She felt energy flowing through her, connected to the soil, the trees, and the streams. It was a deep, unspoken bond that filled her with peace and belonging. One evening, as she watched the bands of light shift across the sky, she realized she no longer felt fear of being alone. She had found a friend, a guardian, and a teacher in this living world. She smiled and whispered, "You are amazing. Thank you for taking me in." A soft glow surrounded her, almost like the planet had wrapped her in its embrace. She closed her eyes, feeling calm, safe, and accepted. She had come to understand that even though humanity had abandoned her, the planet had welcomed her. And for the first time since the storm, she believed she could truly live here. Not just survive. Leon had been living on the glowing planet for weeks, learning its rhythms and its subtle ways of communicating. She had explored valleys and hills, streams and groves, and every day she felt more connected to the world around her. The planet seemed alive, responsive, and in its own way, protective. One morning, while following a narrow path lined with glowing plants, she reached a small plateau and decided to rest. She took out her supplies, carefully eating the last of the preserved nutrient bars. Even though she was surviving on what the planet provided, she had learned to ration human food, a reminder of where she had come from. She pulled out a small, damaged communication device she had salvaged from the pod. She had been hesitant to use it, thinking it might be useless, but curiosity and longing for connection pushed her to try. She carefully cleaned the circuits, repaired what she could, and turned it on. A faint light blinked, and the machine hummed weakly. It was alive enough to send a signal, though she knew the chances of anyone receiving it were slim. Her hands trembled slightly as she activated the transmitter. She sent a short, simple message, speaking clearly into the device. "This is Leon. I am alive. I have survived. I am on a new world." She repeated it several times, hoping that some distant receiver might catch it. Hours passed with no reply. The device blinked weakly, struggling to maintain power. She sighed and put it down, feeling a mix of hope and despair. The planet seemed to sense her emotions. The ground under her pulsed softly, like a gentle heartbeat. The plants nearby glimmered in reassuring colors, and a faint wind carried a soothing fragrance. The next day, she tried again. This time, the device picked up a faint, garbled signal. Her heart leaped. She adjusted the frequency and listened carefully. Through the static, a human voice came, tired but clear. "We hear you." "Leon, can you repeat?" Tears blurred her vision. Her voice shook as she responded, telling them her location and that she was alive. She waited eagerly for instructions, for the promise of rescue, but the response chilled her. "We cannot commit a mission." The storm and distance make retrieval impossible. Your status is considered terminated. We cannot risk more resources. The words hit her like a cold wave. She sank to her knees, gripping the device. The hope she had clung to shattered, leaving a raw ache inside. She felt the weight of abandonment heavier than ever. Humanity had turned its back on her, officially and completely. For a moment, despair threatened to overwhelm her. She thought of the ship, the crew, the friends she had known, and now realized none of them could or would come for her. She was alone, truly alone. She looked around. The glowing trees, the gentle stream, the soft light of the forest, all of it seemed unchanged, welcoming, and alive. She realized then that while humanity had forsaken her, the planet had not. The ground beneath her pulsed warmly, the air carried a comforting scent, and the wind seemed to whisper softly, brushing her hair and cheek as if offering consolation. She sat there for hours, letting herself feel the depth of human rejection, while also absorbing the quiet embrace of the planet. Slowly, anger and sadness gave way to a strange kind of peace. She realized she had a choice, to dwell on the betrayal or to embrace the world that had accepted her. Determined to survive and learn, she began to explore further. She followed paths shaped subtly by the planet, discovering new groves, streams, and hidden valleys. Each area seemed more wondrous than the last, alive with soft light and gentle movement. She noticed that the plants responded to her moods. When she felt sad, the glow around her softened. When she felt curiosity and wonder, the colors brightened and pulsed in harmony with her heartbeat. She found a grove of tall, ribbon-like trees whose leaves glimmered with blue and green light. She ran her fingers along the soft bark, feeling warmth that seemed to seep into her bones. The ground under her hands shifted gently, forming shapes that cradled her as she rested. She realized the planet was conscious in a way that was gentle, careful, and protective. She began to experiment, speaking to the world aloud. I am alone, but I am here. I will respect you. I will learn from you. The plants around her pulsed in response. The ground under her hands and feet rippled with gentle waves. The wind carried soft, melodic sounds that made her heart lift. Over days, she learned the subtle language of the planet. She noticed patterns in the light, in the movement of the vines, in the changing glow of the streams. The world was teaching her without words, guiding her, and slowly, she understood that she was becoming a part of it. One evening, she stood on a hill overlooking a valley filled with softly glowing plants. The air was filled with a gentle hum that resonated deep within her chest. She realized the planet had rhythms, like a heartbeat, and she could feel them if she listened carefully. Her mind drifted back to humanity. She felt the sting of abandonment, but she also felt the growing bond with the planet. She understood now that while humans could forsake one another, this world could offer something entirely different: acceptance, care, and companionship without conditions. She decided to stop trying to reach humanity for rescue. The planet had become her home, her guide, and her friend. She would live here, learn from it, and explore the depths of its mysteries. In the quiet of the valley, she lay down on the soft, glowing ground. The planet adjusted to her weight, forming a gentle curve that held her comfortably. She closed her eyes and let herself feel the warmth, the pulse, the quiet love of this living world. For the first time since the storm, she felt truly safe, truly accepted, and truly at peace. She whispered softly, I am not alone. I am here. I am seen. A gentle wave of light and warmth moved through the ground, surrounding her. She smiled, feeling the world embrace her fully. Humanity may have turned away, but this planet had not. It was here, alive and aware, offering everything she needed: safety, understanding, and a home. She drifted into sleep, comforted by the living presence beneath her, ready to explore the wonders the next day would bring. Leon had settled into a rhythm with the living world around her. She awoke each morning to the gentle pulse of the ground beneath her and the soft glow of the forest that shifted in response to her movements. The world seemed to breathe with her, guiding her steps, offering her both safety and comfort in ways she was only beginning to understand. She explored further than she ever had before, discovering valleys filled with glowing plants, streams that reflected the colors of the sky above, and hidden groves where the air smelled sweet and warm. Every step she took was met with subtle reactions from the planet, leaves that swayed as if in greeting, vines that bent gently to make her path clear, soft hums that resonated in her chest. Leon began to understand patterns in the world. Certain plants would react when she felt certain emotions. If she was curious, the glow intensified. If she was calm, the forest shimmered gently. It was as if the planet could sense her moods and respond to them. The realization filled her with awe. She had never known a world to be so alive, so aware, so considerate. She spent long hours sitting by glowing streams, studying the water that seemed to carry energy in gentle waves. She touched the stones and felt vibrations that matched the rhythm of her heartbeat. She felt a deep connection forming, something stronger than mere survival. It was companionship, guidance, and understanding all in one. This world accepted her completely, without condition or question. One day, she discovered a grove of towering trees with ribbons of light hanging from their branches. As she approached, the ribbons swayed and pulsed, reacting to her presence. She felt a sense of welcome, unlike anything she had experienced before. The ground beneath her shifted slightly, forming a gentle rise for her to sit on. She realized that the planet wasn't just reactive, it was protective. She began to speak aloud more regularly, not just to observe the world, but to communicate her own thoughts and intentions. I am learning from you. I want to understand. I will respect you. The forest responded, soft pulses of light spreading through the grove, gentle waves moving through the soil, a breeze carrying subtle melodies. Leon laughed softly, feeling joy she hadn't felt in years. Days turned into weeks, and Leon continued to explore, document, and interact with the world. She sketched glowing plants in her journal, noted patterns in the streams, and recorded the gentle hums she felt vibrating through the ground. Each entry brought her closer to understanding the depth of this world. The planet was teaching her in ways she had never imagined possible. One morning, she awoke to find small glowing fruits at the edge of her resting area. They were soft, warm, and vibrant, placed perfectly for her to find. She realized the planet provided for her, not just physically but emotionally. The fruits nourished her body and lifted her spirits. She smiled, understanding that this was a gesture of care and welcome. She began to test her connection more deeply. By focusing her thoughts and feelings, she could influence subtle changes around her. Flowers would bloom, streams would shift gently, and lights would pulse in response. She realized the planet was not only alive but aware, communicating through sensations and movements instead of words at night. She lay beneath the softly glowing canopy, watching the bands of light in the sky pulse and shift with a rhythm that mirrored her own breathing. She often dreamed of the vast network of roots beneath the surface, moving and glowing as if alive. In her dreams, the planet spoke to her through feelings of safety, curiosity, and encouragement. One evening, while exploring a deeper part of the forest, she discovered a hidden valley with a pool of water that shimmered like liquid glass. The light from the trees above reflected in the water, creating a soft glow that filled the area with warmth. Leon knelt by the pool and touched the surface. Ripples spread outward, carrying reflections of her journey so far. The planet seemed to record her presence, Acknowledging her experiences and learning from them, she stayed in the valley for hours, sitting by the water, feeling the rhythm of the planet, and observing the subtle shifts in light and color. She whispered her gratitude, her respect, and her intentions. The world responded with gentle waves of warmth and pulsing light. Leon felt a profound sense of connection, realizing she was becoming an integral part of this living world. Over time, she learned to move with the world, to anticipate its subtle changes, and to respond with care and attention. She discovered hidden groves where vines formed protective arches, streams that shifted direction to guide her, and areas where the ground pulsed softly to support her weight. The planet provided, guided, and cared for her in ways that felt natural and deeply comforting. As she continued to explore, she noticed that she was changing too. Her fears of isolation and abandonment were slowly fading, replaced with trust and a sense of belonging. She felt more alive here than she had ever felt on the ship. The planet offered not only sustenance, but companionship, understanding, and a sense of home. She spoke to the world often, sharing her thoughts, fears, hopes, and discoveries. The forest responded in its subtle ways, light pulsing, vines shifting, and a gentle hum resonating through the ground. She realized she was part of a dialogue, a living interaction that transcended language. The planet communicated through energy, movement, and feeling, and she was learning to understand it deeply. One day, she followed a series of glowing stones that led her to a hidden grove filled with vibrant plants and trees. The air was thick with a sweet, comforting fragrance. The ground pulsed softly beneath her feet, and she felt a wave of warmth envelop her. The planet seemed to welcome her into this hidden sanctuary, offering her a space of peace, reflection, and learning. Leon sat down and let herself absorb the environment, feeling the connection grow stronger. She realized that the planet was teaching her not just to survive, but to thrive. It was guiding her to understand its rhythms, to learn from its patterns, and to become a part of its living system. She felt gratitude, awe, and a deep sense of purpose. She began to document her experiences meticulously, sketching plants, recording patterns, and noting her interactions. Her journal became a record not just of survival, but of learning, growth, and connection. Each entry reflected her growing understanding and her deepening bond with the living world around her. At night, she would lie beneath the glowing canopy, feeling the rhythm of the planet, and reflect on her journey. She felt a sense of peace and belonging she had never known. The planet had become her companion, guide, and protector. Humanity may have forsaken her, but she had found a home in this living, breathing world. She whispered softly, "I am here. I am learning. I will honor you." The forest responded with a gentle pulse of light and warmth, wrapping around her like an embrace. She smiled, feeling accepted, seen, and understood. She had found a connection deeper than any she had known before, a bond that would guide her for the rest of her life on this extraordinary world. Months had passed since Leon had first arrived on the glowing planet. She had grown stronger, more confident, and more attuned to the rhythms of this living world. Every movement she made seemed to echo through the forest in subtle ways. Every step she took met with gentle guidance. She felt a deep bond with the world, one that went beyond survival and became a true partnership. She continued to explore, venturing into areas she had not yet seen. Valleys stretched out with glowing plants, streams twisted in soft curves that mirrored the sky above, and hidden groves offered spaces of calm and reflection. Each new discovery was met with subtle reactions from the environment. Trees bent gently, branches swaying as if to guide her. The ground beneath her pulsed softly, adjusting to her steps. Streams shifted slightly to offer easier paths. She realized she had become part of the living ecosystem, not just a visitor. One day, she returned to the small repaired communication device she had salvaged from the pod. She had hesitated for months, unsure if humanity would still care. Now, however, she felt ready to send a final message. She carefully adjusted the device, repaired weak circuits, and activated the transmitter. A faint signal blinked on, stronger than before, thanks to modifications she had made with materials from the planet itself. She spoke into it clearly. "This is Leon. I am alive. I am on a new world. I have survived. I am well." She paused, listening to the static that crackled in response. Then, gathering courage, she added, "I have found a home here. I am safe, and I am learning. I do not need rescue. I am grateful for life and for this world." The device hummed quietly. She could not tell if anyone heard her. It did not matter. She had made her peace. Humanity had turned away, but she had found a world that embraced her fully, unconditionally. After sending the message, she walked through the glowing forest, feeling lighter than she had in months. She passed through familiar groves and streams, smiling at the subtle greetings the plants offered. The leaves shimmered brighter, the ground pulsed warmer, and the streams reflected her presence with gentle ripples. She felt the world recognize her as a being worthy of its attention and care. She discovered a new valley that seemed to radiate a calm energy. The trees were taller here, their branches woven together to form natural archways. Light glowed from every leaf and stem, bathing the area in soft hues of blue, green, and gold. The air was thick with a gentle fragrance, sweet and comforting. Leon wandered through the arches, marveling at the subtle design of the world. It felt as though she were walking through a cathedral of living light. In the center of the valley, she found a pool of water, still and luminous. She knelt beside it, touching the surface. The water reflected the sky, the forest, and her own image. But more than that, she felt the presence of the planet itself, aware and welcoming. The water rippled in gentle patterns, like a heartbeat, synchronized with the pulse she felt in the soil beneath her. She closed her eyes and placed her hands on the ground, focusing on the energy flowing through the valley. The pulse strengthened, spreading outward in waves of warmth and light. She whispered softly, "I am here. I am part of you. I will honor you." The planet responded, sending a wave of energy that enveloped her. The vines and trees seemed to bend slightly closer, the air grew warmer, and the light shimmered more vividly. Leon felt a profound sense of belonging and acceptance. She realized that she was no longer merely surviving. She was living in harmony with a conscious, aware, and nurturing world. Days passed in quiet exploration and learning. She discovered hidden groves with fruits that glowed softly, streams that curved to make paths more gentle, and small caves filled with crystals that hummed softly when touched. She documented everything in her journal, sketching the shapes, recording the movements, and noting her interactions. Each entry deepened her understanding and strengthened her bond with the planet. One night, she lay beneath the softly glowing canopy of trees, watching the bands of light pulse and shift in harmony with her breathing. She reflected on her journey, the storm, the ship, the abandoned rescue, and now this world that had taken her in completely. The fear and loneliness she had felt so acutely were replaced with trust, acceptance, and love. Humanity had turned away, but she had found a home that embraced her unconditionally. She realized that she had become a bridge between worlds. Her presence and her learning were acknowledged by the planet, and through her documentation and observations, she could one day share the wonder of this world with others. She did not feel urgency or pressure. She felt readiness and purpose. She had discovered that sometimes the universe shows compassion where humanity fails. She spent her days exploring further, discovering intricate patterns in the movements of the streams, the colors of the glowing plants, and the rhythms of the forest itself. Each discovery brought joy and wonder, and the world responded with subtle shifts, gentle hums, and bursts of light. Leon learned to move in harmony with the environment, respecting its energy and being mindful of her impact. The planet guided her, and she followed willingly, understanding that she was a part of something greater. Over time, she developed a routine. She would explore, document, interact, and rest beneath the glowing canopy. She spoke aloud, expressing gratitude, curiosity, and intentions. The forest pulsed and shimmered in response, creating a feedback loop of understanding and communication that transcended words. Leon had found a way to communicate with a conscious world, and it had welcomed her as one of its own. Months into her life on the planet, Leon returned to the central valley with the pool. She knelt and placed her hands in the water, closing her eyes and focusing on the connection she had cultivated. She felt the pulse of the planet beneath her, the rhythm of the streams, the gentle warmth of the glowing trees. A wave of understanding washed over her. She was home, and this world had chosen her, embraced her, and nurtured her in a way no other being could. She whispered softly, "I thought I was abandoned by everything, but you have taken me in. You have shown me love and guidance. I will stay, I will learn, I will honor you." The water rippled, the light pulsed, and the air seemed to vibrate with a gentle hum, enveloping her in warmth and calm. Leon realized that her story would continue here, with this world. She did not need rescue or approval. She had been forsaken by humanity, yes, but she had been embraced by something greater, a living, conscious world that offered understanding, protection, and companionship. She smiled, feeling a deep sense of peace, purpose, and belonging. The glowing forest, the shimmering streams, the gentle hum of the ground, and the soft light of the trees had become her home. She was part of it, and it was part of her. She had discovered that the universe could be compassionate, and that sometimes, when one is abandoned by the familiar, one can be welcomed by something extraordinary. Leon lay down by the pool, the ground forming a gentle curve beneath her. She looked up at the bands of glowing light in the sky, pulsing slowly with a rhythm she could feel in her chest. She whispered once more, "I am here. I am part of you. I am alive, and I am seen." The planet responded with a wave of warmth and gentle pulsing light, wrapping around her like a loving embrace. As she drifted into sleep, she felt a profound gratitude. Humanity had turned away, but this world had opened its arms, teaching her, nurturing her, and accepting her fully. She had found safety, purpose, and belonging. She had found a home beyond all expectations. And in that embrace, she knew she would live fully, explore deeply, and honor the connection she had been given for the rest of her days.